Hello everybody. Welcome to the stream. Different day, different time, but same old show. Tonight we're going to be playing some more of this France game because I'm really into this, um, and talking some history. And first of all, I would like to thank all of you because I am officially a Twitch affiliate. I went through the onboarding earlier this week, and you guys have allowed me to take the first step towards monetizing this podcast and making it into like my actual job. So it's a very small step. I'm nowhere near being able to stop doing my day job, but it's a first step, and I really cannot thank you all enough for tuning in like you have been to watch me stare at a map. So really, I can't thank you all enough. And let's get going on this France playthrough. And one thing I'm immediately noticing about this update is colonization is gonna blow hard. I don't know what they did, like what Paradox did, but this is gonna be a pain in the ass. I want to do a kind of historical French Empire, so I'm definitely gonna want to take over Louisiana and Acadia. But Paradox has made sure that's gonna be a huge pain in the ass. Yeah, we're not doing any of the innovative ideas until we tech up. Because we are currently a little bit behind in admin, but it's not a big deal. Plus, our air looks pretty freaking great, admin-wise. Also, right off the bat, I would like to say, I have I've only ever seen the Byzantine AI last this long one time, and it's mostly because the Mamluks are getting their teeth kicked in, or the Ottomans are getting their teeth kicked in by the Mamluks, because the Ottomans ain't what they used to be. And I had to delete a fair amount of my fleet last time to make up for my budget deficits. After actually, hold on, let me check if. All right, Holland is part of the empire, but who's the emperor? Hesse. Okay, this will be easy. So yeah, goals for tonight. We are going to be reclaiming our cores in Burgundy and probably eating Flanders. Then if we can, the Romandie, which is this region right here, that kind of ends right about where the Alps are, or where the it's an alpine region that ends right about where the Rhine does. We're also going to be conquering Corsica. Maybe not all tonight, but once we have Burgundy secure and Holland beaten back, then it'll just be the arduous task of actually pushing to the Rhine. And actually, I have loans, so what I'm gonna do is good. Oh, it's all bourgeoisie loans. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, these are all just 1% interest. That's easy to pay back then. No reason to worry about that. I will, however, delete this fort here. Leave the one at Verdun because that was historically a major fortified French town, and they really cracked down. They really doubled down on that in World War One. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I had to move it to a new day and time to match my schedule a little bit better. Still wanted to do this second weekly stream, but couldn't do it on Friday evenings anymore. I will probably be adding a Tuesday stream, though. I was thinking of doing maybe like a Total War Tuesdays or something like that, because I'm getting back into Total War Medieval 2, which is a great fucking game. Just one I have not played in forever, and that I've forgotten most of the details to. Sounds like I've got some competition then. Oh well. As always, this stream will be uploaded to YouTube about a day or so from now. So, if you miss it, you can just catch it there. And tonight I am drinking Guinness's Baltimore Blonde because I live not that far from the new Guinness brewery in the US. Oh yeah, I'm not a huge fan of stouts, but this surprise it's a very good like crisp lagery kind of beer. I highly recommend it if you can find yourself some. Can't remember off the top of my head if it's an ale or a lager, but it's really good. Okay, and Holland is going to be my main concern tonight. Oh, don't worry about it. No, I do. I have Irish ancestry. I am familiar with that one. It's the equivalent of Cheers, if I'm not mistaken. And also, we're going to be building up our Mediterranean fleet to finally crack down on these pirates that have been ransacking the southern coasts here. And it looks like they might not be a problem for that much longer, because it looks like Spain is absolutely destroying them. Let's see, does Tunis have any strong allies? They got the Ottomans, but the Ottomans aren't particularly strong in this run, so I don't think Tunis has a snowball's chance in hell with this powerful of a Spain just eating them up. Go away, Microsoft. See, to Apple's credit, they let you choose when to update things. Microsoft decides, yeah, we're updating now. Get fucked. Probably not well. It's really hard to predict those sort of things because a lot of people get nostalgic for presidents from their childhood, even if said presidents weren't particularly great. That said, objectively, this Afghanistan situation is... I think the phrase clusterfuck is being too kind. Granted, Afghanistan has always kind of been a shit show for invading powers, so, I mean, they don't call it the graveyard of empires for nothing. Even Alexander the Great couldn't hold it for that long. Granted, he died. He might have been able to, but Genghis Khan was smart. He just fucking avoided the whole place. So, honestly, really hard to say. Like, now, time generally has a way of making presidents get more popular the longer they're out of office. Yeah, probably. But, so it's like, there's this effect where the vast majority of presidents get more popular the further out from their presidency we get. With a few exceptions, like Buchanan has always been remembered as a fucking atrocious president. There's a handful of others. I don't think Carter will ever be looked on all that fondly. But generally, most presidents are more popular after they're out of office. You can observe it across party lines, and throughout the last couple century, like the last century or so. Presidents just get more popular when they're out of office because they can't fuck with as much, and people tend to forget the bad things. I'm familiar with Quisling, but I'm not familiar with that word. I believe he was the a Nazi collaborator in Norway, if I'm not mistaken. I've heard the name. I'm not overly familiar with his actual story. I just know that he betrayed Norway to the Nazis as a collaborator. Hmm. I don't know if I'd say Quisling. I think I'd go more along like a kind of like a Jimmy Carter sort of figure, where he's just hilariously incompetent. And I say hilariously because it's easier to laugh than cry when bad shit happens. But I wasn't alive for Carter. I just know that he was not remembered very well. And I know the 70s kind of sucked for a lot of reasons. Like, I was around. I was born during the Clinton presidency, but I don't remember much of it. I got you. Yeah, I don't think I'd really been making memories by the time uh, Clinton was still in office. I think my earliest memories are from. Yeah, no, it would have been Clinton. I remember very little of the Clinton presidency, but I was around for it. Howdy, welcome to the stream. New night, same historian. So gonna just be moving this stream to Thursdays, but should still be a bunch of fun. Howdy, welcome, welcome. Continuing with our French foolishness, we're gonna reabsorb our cores in Burgundy. And for those of you who missed it, Holland pulled a full blown Uno reverse card on Burgundy and got them in a union. I've never seen that happen, but here we are. And I remember that when I was in what was it? What would it have been? It would have been like fourth or fifth grade. We did a mock election for Kerry and Bush. But yeah, no. Holland got Burgundy in the Union. I have never seen this happen. I've played over 1,000 hours of EU4. I have never once seen this shit happen. Don't get me wrong, I think it's funny. It's weird to look at. So let's fix it. Okay. Who will we be up against? Well, we can call. Oh, this will be easy. We've got Bohemia in as an ally, so Hesse doesn't won't be able to fucking do anything against that. That is true. I notice when this weird shit happens, I'm around for it. Although sometimes I've gone like The Asia reveal is always interesting, because you can see some real wackadoo shit when you see that for the first time. Or the Europe reveal if you're not playing in Europe. Like, I don't know what my screen is doing, if you can see, like, weird green bars. It does this sometimes. I don't know how to fix it. But it'll probably be fixed. It sorts itself out. It always does. Alright, let's blow open these forts. So who are we up against? Okay, good. Yeah, it's probably just my monitor doing some weird stuff. These are budget monitors. When I got them, I didn't really have the money to pop for anything more expensive. Alright, let's go up to Naaman. Yeah, this should be... These next couple wars should be fairly... And it looks like they've just decided to go after... I will take that military power. Yeah, these next couple... It looks like they've just decided to attack Holland... Or, Czechia, which is fucking weird. You'd think they'd go after me, because I'm the one who actually wants their territory. But Paradox AI has never been that smart, so... Also, I should be charging war taxes, because I want to pay back these loans. Oh, I already am. There we go. Also, I have a mod on that makes forts more important, so they capture the surrounding territory. I think it makes the game a bit more interesting. But now that more of you are here, I wanted to thank you all for subscribing, and because you guys are awesome. Because I just became a Twitch affiliate, so they, I don't know exactly how it'll work, but they said they'd start running ads on my streams, and this is like the first step for me to be able to start monetizing this podcast and turning it into something that I can make into my actual job. So I really can't thank you all enough, and cheers to you guys. Weird, I'm trying to make it so I thought I'd selected so that subscribers didn't have to watch ads. I'll go in after tonight and see about that. Or followers, and I never get the language right. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, so Spain wants to join. Good for you guys. Let's get in here. So yeah, we're going to be expanding France to its natural borders. Thanks, dude. Okay, I got you. Huh. Yeah, we're going to be extending these monopolies for a little while. Eventually, we're going to want that money. But for now, it'll help us pay back these loans. Honestly, couldn't say. I don't usually like talking, like, modern politics, because everyone's just angry all the time. I'd say it's generally not good. Worse than Bush, definitely. Granted, I was a kid for most of Bush. Biden has been rightly attacked from both sides of the aisle, which is... The speed at which the fuck-ups has occurred is alarming, to say the very least. Discrepancies between de jure and de facto borders. Really depends on. So, a lot of that is a game mechanic that was introduced for the Crusader Kings games. Realistically, like, de jure legal borders didn't exist in the medieval era. Um, the borders were the extent to which the lords vassalized to the king or emperor or whatever had control. Um, so there are areas where it kind of like fades between one or the other, where like there wasn't a stark hard border between, say, the HRE and France. There was a general border where French rule ended and German rule began, but it wasn't so set in stone. Um, Castles moved it a little bit one way or the other, so really where your borders began and ended was how much influence your lord had over smaller nobles around the area. Oh yeah, wars were almost constant in borderlands. In fact, when a lot of sort of border vassals had different titles, so like margraves or marcher lords were typically dukes and counts in borderlands who usually had more leeway from the crown. Like they typically had lower taxes and were allowed to raise larger armies. Because if someone was coming across the border, they wanted strong nobles in place to deal with that. So historically, like let's take the HRE for an example. The Margraves of Brandenburg had a bit more autonomy than most because they were border lords. So if there was an attack from, say, the Poles, or earlier from the Baltic pagan tribes, it was usually up to these marcher lords here to repel them. So they typically had a bit more power and wealth. Brandenburg being an exception there because Brandenburg's lands are very poor. But yeah, it did cause a lot of issues along the borders, and that's why typically lords along the borders were stronger than lords further towards the interior, at least in terms of military strength. They typically didn't have as much like influence with the king or the emperor, but locally they were very powerful where they were. We also got to deal with Munster. So it's you'll actually see it here with this border mod that I have on. This makes it a bit more accurate, but you see like these little pockets of like Polish territory inside of Hungary. That was there historically. Like Poland had a mess of castles right here along the Carpathian border that they controlled, but they were within territory that was technically also controlled by the Hungarian king. So the control really belonged to who was able to exert more military influence over the region. The other thing is culture and language groups. Oftentimes, culture and language groups would sort of coalesce naturally into kingdoms. But it wasn't that uncommon for a medieval duke or count to go pick a fight over some border territory if he thought he could. Not yet. Winged Hussars showed up much later. So Hussars were Poland weren't the only country with Hussars. They were a very common sort of light cavalry unit in Eastern Europe, typically armed with sabers. And plenty of countries had them. It's just Poland had their Hussars equipped in heavier armor, and they also functioned as lancers. So they were very effective heavy cavalry who could kind of do double duty. So, I mean, light and heavy cavalry had very different uses throughout history, but the winged Hussars were pretty good at both roles, both scouting and heavy charges. But the thing that made them Hussars was usually that they were equipped with sabers in addition to their lances, but most Hussars did not also have lances. But actually, yeah, exactly. Your heavy cavalry was typically held until the end of the battle to bring it to a decisive end. Most pre-World War I battle tactics were some variation of hammer and anvil. There were a few exceptions there. Napoleon and others innovated, but typically your infantry held the other infantry in line while your cavalry delivered the killing blow. Typically charging at the rear or flank of your enemy. And that was what heavy cavalry was for. That was what like Alexander's companions or French knights were used for. A devastating charge delivered at lance point to the enemy flank or rear. Lighter cavalry were typically used swords and were more scouts. Like, they were useful against infantry and the like, but their main role was not combat. It was scouting ahead and skirmishing with enemy scouts. Yeah, you could do frontal charges. It was just generally a bad idea. So in Vienna, what happened was the Turks had kind of become surrounded. So what happened was the Turks had a very effective siege going on around Vienna. The Germans and Polish allies came and outflanked them. The German and Austrian infantry engaged them first, and then the Poles attacked from a different angle. So they were charging into the front of some of the Turkish units, but the Turks were kind of fighting on multiple fronts at that point. Frontal charges could be done. It's the main reason that frontal charges aren't all that great of an idea is spears are remarkably effective anti-cavalry weapons that don't require a whole lot of training to use effectively. So you can actually see an example of this working in the opposite way when at the Battle of Tours-Poitiers, when the Muslims invaded France, the Muslims from Spain invaded France. Charles Martel rallied a French army, most of whom were equipped with spears. They just set up, wedged their spears together in a shield line, and the horses charged up, and they just thrust the spears right into the chest cavity of the horses and killed them. The other thing is, you need a hell of a war horse for it to even be willing to charge into a line of lances. Because most horses just won't. They'll freeze before they actually hit the enemy force, and then the enemy can like answer them with bows or by charging forward with the spears. Because unless you have like full horse armor, like the French did in the medieval era, or other Europeans had it. It was just the French were the most famous for using it. Arrows were remarkably effective anti-cavalry weapons. And before that, javelins were also very useful. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that would have been a terrifying... The front line against a cavalry assault would have been terrifying to be up against. But you would need to remember that if you held a spear, you had a serious edge on that horseman. as long as you were in a line with like a dozen or so other of your best friends, and you had a few guys behind you to absorb the blow. The other thing is, even if... So this is how anti-cavalry infantry tactics tended to work. Even if the odd horseman was able to break through the front line, most lines were 4 to 8 men deep. So if it got past the first 2 or 3 guys, it would be the horse and rider would immediately be surrounded and cut down with closer range weapons, usually swords or daggers or whatever the hell else the infantrymen had on them. Because standard infantry equipment is a really recent thing. More often than not, your average infantryman was a peasant equipped with whatever weapon he had at home. Like axes, for example. Axes were popular weapons of war, mostly because your average peasant had one. It's what he could get his hands on that would be relatively effective on the battlefield. Oh yeah, and you gotta think of... I do not want to discount at all what modern soldiers go through. But back then, the matter of killing an opposing soldier was a matter of disemboweling him, usually from arm's reach. So when you read about, like, the Battle of Cannae, where something like 80,000 Romans were slaughtered by the Carthaginians, 80,000 sounds like a lot. It sounds like even more when you realize every single one of those guys had to be cut down literally by hand. And they didn't go down like they do in the movies, where it's like one blow to an unguarded area and he's done. The guy you were trying to kill with a sword was fighting tooth and nail against you. And it was dirty, it was up close, and it was brutal in a way that most people cannot even begin to wrap their heads around. I think part of what makes modern war so much different is you can't even see the guy who's killing you, or the sniper who just blew your friend's head off. It's just as disturbing, but in a different way. If that makes any sense. At least that's my theory. I have never even thought of joining the military, so at least that's just my interpretation of what makes modern PTSD different from what men from the medieval or ancient era might have experienced. But it's ancient warfare sounds brutal until you realize it's way worse than you think it was. Because, like, say you are a cavalryman, say you're the elite of a medieval army, and you charge into a line of infantry, most of whom will be lightly armored peasants, peasant levies who were farming just a few months before this. You're going to hear their bones crunching under the hooves of your horse. You're going to hear their intestines splatter as your lance rips them open. And you're probably going to get covered in their blood. And your blood. You might get seriously cut and have to keep fighting. So, ancient warfare was brutality on a level that most modern people can't even begin to understand. I think most people would. I mean, it was an ancient form of biological warfare, but in the medieval era, where you wear, like, I am an archer, so I can tell you where you wear your quiver is a matter of your taste. I prefer the over-the-back quiver, but some people prefer the hip quiver. Oftentimes, the arrows would be driven into the ground, and just sort of picked up from the front and then shot, so it made it faster. Oftentimes, especially during sieges, archers would take a shit on the battlefield and dip their arrowheads in it to increase the chance of infecting somebody with an arrow. Because if the arrow doesn't like sever a major artery or hit a vital organ, there's a decent chance they would live through it. Not if it was dipped in shit and they developed a severe infection from it. Like, there are cases of people who got shot in the face with arrows and continued living. I believe it was Henry IV took an arrow to the face during a battle with the French, and an English surgeon had to pull the arrowhead out of his skull, like it was lodged in the bone. And he was fine. He went on to live for a few decades more. And mind you, this is surgery pre-anesthetics. So the surgeon went in there, probably with a relatively dirty tool, and pulled that arrowhead out. While there were like 5 or 6 guys holding the king down to make sure that he didn't hurt the surgeon. And it's like, imagine... Oh yeah, they probably had him loaded. The only problem with that is alcohol is a blood thinner. So you don't want to give him too much or the chances of him bleeding out go up. The blood won't clot, and all of a sudden you killed the king. Alright, let's see if we can wrap this war up. Jure is the only one who's actually still fighting. Oh no, I want... Can I take this too? Alright, that would give me a coalition, but of who? Okay, because that's a core, I'm not getting a coalition. So let me take the provinces that are mine. Should also be able to get a nice chunk of change out of them. There we go. Now that's the other thing that annoys me is people don't give ancient doctors the credit they deserve. They did the best they had with the knowledge and tools available to them. And some of the smarter ones did not do a bad job at all. Thank you for the subscription. I will be... I do these streams every Thursday from 9 to 11, and then every Sunday from 8 to 10:30. And I'm looking to add a third stream to the lineup. Okay. Don't know if I can. What do I build next? I just clicked on that. Really not a whole lot. I'll upgrade my trade centers. That's what I'll do. Let's upgrade Bordeaux. Oh no, I need more development. It makes sense, but I'm not crazy about that change. Like, I get why they did it. I just don't like it. But, yeah, so, ancient warfare is even more brutal than you probably imagined it was. And then when you consider the fact that before the age of antibiotics and proper wound dressing, even a small cut was a serious risk for infection. Actually, pre-Geneva Convention, it was pretty fucking brutal too, because a lot of bayonets were triangular in shape because it was really hard for a surgeon to close. Oh, that's not good. That's never a good thing to hear. Um, let's hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I, I hope to Christ that doesn't happen. Um, I guess it's always a distinct possibility, but I really hope that that's not how this goes down. But I would love to know. And the other thing is, you got to consider it's a lot of what we think of as like modern PTSD, right? We know about it. Well, only really since World War One is when it first started getting attention. But you got to consider the field of psychology didn't really exist during all those ancient wars. So I would be willing to bet that a lot of people suffered from it. It just went undiagnosed and didn't really have a name. Like, war probably fucked a lot of people up prior to World War One when psychologists first started taking note of this condition of basically the human brain getting overwhelmed by combat. So I would wager that people knew war would mess you up a little bit, probably a lot of bit. It just didn't have a name until the field of psychology existed and people actually started studying the human mind. That could also definitely be the case. We also have to realize that modern secularism is pretty unprecedented in history. And you're going to consider for a lot of people throughout history, like their town or village or even neighborhood of a city was basically one big extended family. Most modern social alienation has made sure that that's not a thing most people have these days. Also, I should be able to lock in that claim on Corsica. Want to get that before the Spaniards decide they want the rest of the Mediterranean islands. The other thing you got to consider is that, and this I generally think this is yeah, exactly. It's that was your normal village during the medieval or especially during the ancient period. A village was like a handful of families that all kind of knew each other. It was like it was whatever groups of people settled in the area a long, long time ago, usually. Exactly. There are still places like that. They're just not nearly as common as they used to be. Yes, they did used to marry cousins, but in most societies that was frowned upon unless you were, well, as long as they were like third and fourth cousins of are still acceptable in a lot of cultures to marry, but first cousin marriage was generally frowned upon. Yeah. So the Pope would actually, or a bishop in his stead, would actually dissolve marriages if the bride and groom were if the marriage was consanguineous, which is that the bride and the groom were too closely related. Generally, that only really happened with nobility, though, and peasants got away with a lot more. I mean, in fact, marrying for love was always what the peasants did, but and yeah, it's like your options are pretty limited if he's only like 5 or 6 different families, and most of them are distantly related from one another to begin with. There we go. We're making money. The pirates have been dealt with. Howdy, welcome to the stream. Moved this one to Thursday nights. Figured it would work better. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm from the East Coast of the United States. I've been to those parts of the country, and there's parts of like that in well everywhere. Yes, so it's something that happened quite frequently in the Islamic world. In Christian countries, it was generally frowned upon, and your marriage could actually be dissolved if you were too closely related to your spouse. Yeah, it is. It's tragic, but it unfortunately is. Um, First cousin marriage is still pretty common in a lot of the world. Like the odds of a birth defect with your third or fourth cousin is, I mean, it's a possibility, um, but it's not nearly as likely. Um, huh? I did not know that. Aunt nephew. That's well, that's one way to live your life. All right. So what do we go after next? Oh, we eventually will have to pick a fight with Austria to grab this one. Mulhouse. That should be a pretty easy war. I mean, Strasbourg, who are you allied with? That's easy. See, because Austria is not the emperor, I can get away with a lot of shit right now. And also, yeah, the Habsburgs brought cousin marriage in vogue in Europe in their day and age. It was mostly what happens when you marry everybody and there's nobody left to marry that you're not related to. Also, that is tragic, messed. Grant, I don't. Also, yeah, I mean the Habsburg chin is the result of like 5 or 6 straight up generations of inbreeding. That's what caused it. What happens during inbreeding is that very negative recessive traits that are ordinarily suppressed by the introduction of genes from someone who isn't related to you start to surface. So that sort of Habsburg jaw was a recessive gene that most Habsburgs carried within them that only started to surface when they were only marrying other Habsburgs. For the centuries where they were marrying people they weren't related to, that gene was suppressed. So very negative recessive traits surface during extensive inbreeding. Huh. That does sound pretty damn OP. Yeah, no, the Lannisters were only a little fucked up relative to what actually happened. Like, I think there might actually be a Wikipedia page for Habsburg Jaw. Yeah, the medical term is prognathism. It's when the jaw juts out the lower jaw juts out dramatically. But yeah, they basically fucked themselves into a horrible situation, quite literally. Oh yeah, no, there are still plenty of Habsburgs hanging around. Oh no, Jay Leno just has a big chin. Habsburg it sticks forward quite a lot. But yeah, this is what it led to. But yeah, the Habsburgs are still hanging around. One of them is actually a Formula One driver. And also, yeah, there were in Egypt, brother sister marriage was actually customary because it had a religious justification. So, in Egyptian religion, Osiris, the chief god, was married to his sister Isis. So it was believed. So in Egyptian religion, Osiris represented the pharaoh in death. Um, Horus and Ra represented the pharaoh during life. So to imitate the gods and be the sort of physical representation of the god Osiris in particular on Earth, the pharaohs would marry their sisters just as it was believed the god they were the physical incarnation of married his, because Isis and Osiris were brother and sister. And also true, with modern science, inbreeding should be a thing of the past, but here we are. Um, and oh yeah, the blue bloods bred some awful diseases into themselves. Egyptian religion is pretty fucking interesting. I took a course with my favorite professor. I don't teach for a living. I actually work as a finance writer. Um, I did look into becoming I wanted to when I was in college. I actually wanted to be a history professor on the college level. But before I graduated, I went and I talked to my favorite professor, Dr. Elena Gadati, and I mean, basically, yeah. But I talked to her, and she said that she wouldn't recommend that I be a professor because, in her words, it is completely irresponsible the rate at which American universities are turning out history graduates. Um, so then I looked into like high school teaching, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. So then I tried law school, and I hated it, and I quit after one semester. And then I kind of drifted around for a little bit, working in like warehouses and the like, and like in stock, like odd jobs basically. Then I got an internship because the company I work for now owns a bunch of historical buildings in Baltimore City, where I'm from, and they preserve them. Like the building I work in or worked in before COVID started is a beautiful old 19th century brownstone in one of the oldest parts of Baltimore City. And it's pretty well preserved and just used as office space. So I loved that about the company. But one of the higher ups at the company wanted to write a book about the history of all the buildings that they use. So I was hired to do historical research on those buildings. And when that wrapped up, I'm like, I really like this company. And they had an opening for a research job, and I applied and got it. Um, and right about the same time I dropped out of law school, I started this history podcast as a way to continue on with history. History is like my lifelong love. Um, I have been interested in and studying history since I was very little. And I wanted to it's my passion, so I wanted to do something with it. So I figured, in my free time, I will do this history podcast. And here I am now. But anyway, back to Egyptian religion for a moment. One of my favorite professors in college was Dr. Gadati. She was great. Born in Italy, she puts most people to shame. She was fluent in Italian, German, French, English, obviously, as well as some dead languages. Like she spoke Latin, classical Greek, and some ancient Egyptian and Sumerian. Like she was fucking incredible, and she was an expert on the ancient Near East and Egypt. And that wasn't even my specialty, and I took any class I could with her. I specialized in East Asian history, but I still, anytime she was doing a class, I was like, I'm taking it. Just because I loved her teaching style. She was funny, man. She was very sarcastic and it was very witty in her comments. So I loved her classes. Yeah, languages are. It's. I have very little affinity for language, if I will be 100% honest with you. So, at the time in college, it was, growing up in the United States, most of what I learned in history classes was Western history. So, I had a pretty firm grasp on, like, Rome, medieval Europe, and some bits before that. But initially it was, you know what? I haven't studied this before. So this is something interesting. So I took a few courses on. One was East Asian history very broadly. Another one was focused in on dynastic China, and I was hooked. I was fascinated right off the bat. And then where I went to school, even undergrad historians were supposed to specialize to a degree. So I wound up tracking into East Asian history with a very heavy focus on dynastic China, feudal Japan, and the Korean War. And then, yeah, the Chinese Empire goes back a ways. But I actually wound up, we had to write two sort of thesis papers to graduate from where I went to school. It was Towson University in Maryland. And I wrote both papers on the history of the Korean War. One of them was a military analysis of the war, specifically focusing in on how the Chinese and the American armies fought the war. The second one was an analysis of Sino-Soviet politics during the war, sort of the power politics going on between Mao and Stalin behind it all. I read parts of Gilgamesh. Never the full thing, but we read bits and pieces about it. And also, that is a really impressive list of languages. That was yeah. That's Slavic, Germanic, and well, Hungarian's not even European in origin. That's impressive. Though it makes sense. Your grandfather was born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, correct? Also, I've got to be getting close to getting my first. Yes, I am pretty close to my first colonist. Oh, I can tell you that. I mean, my grandmother was born 1934, so she was born in the midst of the Great Depression, um, and then lived through World War II. Granted, she was a child, but she lived through World War II, and then well, my grandfather actually almost went to Korea, but he was discharged because he was an only child. Um, then they lived through everything that came after, which had to also be pretty fucking weird. Yep, both of them were members of the Silent Generation. And I'm going to take more bourgeois. Oh, and I can give him Monopoly on Glass. Get some of that money. There we go. Yeah, that's. I'd be depressed. Yeah, I'd be depressed if. Well, I mean, the anti-vax thing cracks me up because I mean, when my granddad was born, polio was still dropping people like flies, and he remembers when the polio vaccine. Well, remembered he passed on a few years back, but he remembered when the polio vaccine first became available. Everybody wanted it. And then my other grandparents were a bit younger. They were born in the mid to late 40s. They still got to see a hell of a lot of history in their lifetimes, but oh crap, sorry. My computer is a little weird with how it chooses to display EU4, so a lot of the. Yeah, I would go. The internet's a double-edged sword. Yes, it's the repository of all the knowledge you could ever want, but a lot of it's shitty knowledge. Because the number of people I talk to who think they're a history expert because they read the Wikipedia page on something is astounding and depressing. Now, don't get me wrong, Wikipedia is a great jumping off point for your study of history, but it's more useful for the sources listed at the bottom than anything in the page itself. So definitely read Wikipedia if you have an interest in a topic, but then go look into the sources because the sources are often very well written quality books on history. I mean, hell, if you guys want history book recommendations, I can give you a few on a few different topics. But I'll see if Facebook is most social media is a shithole. So Korean War. It's been a while since I accessed any of those, but one of the ones that I would really recommend, especially if you're interested in um, the Chinese role in the war, is Mao's Generals Remember Korea. This is especially good if you're interested in sort of inter-communist relations during the war. Because this one is literally autobiographical information from various Chinese generals during the war. And they write about, like, dealing with the Russians and how they strategized against the Americans. Um, Really good book. It's expensive, but you can probably find some used ones cheaper. This didn't used to be that expensive. They must have taken it out of print. Like when I got this, it was like $30. It was so yeah. This is a really good. I have it on my shelf right now, actually. Um, There was a great one I read about Stalin. I just can't remember the name of it. I will try to find it this week and have it for you on the Sunday stream. And then another good one. It's not specifically related to Korea, but also related to Maoist China. Is Son of the Revolution by Liang. He was a child during Mao's reign of terror, basically during the Great Leap Forward, and this book is basically his memoirs on growing up in Maoist China. Really, really good book. Can't recommend it enough. You will learn just how horrific the Maoist regime was to live under by reading this. And then, completely unrelated from those, Charlemagne by Derek Wilson is an incredible biography on Charlemagne, and kind of goes into just how important his influence was on medieval and even modern Europe. And then the last recommendation I got for you tonight, unless you got any other specific requests, is well, I've got two. Lost to the West by Lars Brownworth is a really good introductory history to the Byzantine Empire and sort of Eastern Rome. It starts in, I believe, 325 with the founding of Constantinople and goes all the way up to 1453. Fascinating book. It's pretty affordable, so definitely give this one. And Lars Brownworth is a great writer. Like, there are times during this where I felt like I was reading a novel. It's that good. I devoured this book in a week. Really, really good. Can't recommend it enough. And then the last one for you tonight I have is well, that's I could give you a full rant on just how shitty what's his name? Isaac somebody. Yeah, Belisarius, the Last Roman General by Ian Hughes. This is an incredible biography of the unsung hero of Justinian's reign. Belisarius was a goddamn badass. Also, I haven't read that book, but it is on my list. I don't get a lot of time to read history that isn't directly related to whatever my current podcast series is. So lately I've just been reading a hell of a lot of late Roman history. But, oh yeah, sure thing. I hope you enjoy them. Let me know what you think. And as for learning history, that's also a big part of why I didn't become a teacher. I considered it, but then I'm like, I don't really want to. Oh, I'm not wearing it tonight, but I will have it on the Sunday stream. I'm rocking the Mr. Rogers shirt tonight. Don't know if you can quite see that, but yeah, Mr. Rogers, great guy. But where was I? Yeah, history teachers. It's the main. There are a lot of great history teachers out there. There are also a lot of shitty ones. So I think what kills a lot of people's interest in history early on is they just have a teacher that sucks at it. Granted, I was blessed when I was a kid. Actually, weird coincidence. A lot of my favorite history teachers have been Italians. Mr. Ippolito was my 6th grade history teacher all the way through middle school, and he was fucking great. He made history. I was already interested in history from a young age. He made it into something that was beyond fascinating to me. He turned my early enjoyment of history into what has become a lifelong love of mine. He was a fascinating guy. He was born in southern Italy, and his mother actually still lives there. His parents grew up during Mussolini's dictatorship, and they told him stories of it from when he was a little boy. But he made a hell of a lot of money as a businessman, enough that he was able to retire by the time he was like 41, 42. And then he just is like, you know what? I love history. I'm going to teach history. And that's what he did, because he didn't have to worry about money anymore. And that's the dream right there. But the main reason I personally didn't become a history teacher is I didn't want to have to deal with school politics and school priorities for public or even in some Catholic schools. The things they'll let you talk about and the things they won't let you talk about, because a lot of really good history doesn't get talked about because it's not acceptable. It's not like within the realm of things you're allowed to talk about, which I think is a lot of horseshit. Because I can tell you, as somebody who's studied history his whole life, you have to be able to talk about every perspective. Otherwise, history doesn't get done. Oh yeah, that doesn't even get touched on until late high school or even college in some cases. Um, but also the socialist phenomenon. I will have to check that out. Um, Trail of Tears is common, but they usually don't get deeper than that. And yeah, history does get warped by whatever your school district's agenda is. And that's the thing is, I mean, when I was in college, Towson had, and I hope it still has, an excellent history department, because I am very grateful that I was trained as a classical historian with some postmodern influence in my history training. Um, but classical historians are trained to read the primary sources and let the past speak for itself. And I think that's the best way to do history. And when I was in school, Marxist historians were just an open joke. Like, I remember one of my professors, Dr. Ropers, was laughing. He's like, and Marxist historians, both of those guys would disagree with us, but so yeah, the sort of political readings of history were laughed at Towson's history department. It was all about classical history combined with some of the good elements about a postmodern reading of history. Like not taking the primary sources entirely at face value and looking for history that wasn't necessarily written by the victor. There's also a lot more working with archaeology that goes on in a lot of modern history that they weren't doing in classical history. So I actually took a handful of archaeology classes to sort of broaden my horizons as a historian and sort of get an understanding for what kind of the other side of the field is like. Because I personally consider archaeologists and historians to be kind of two sides of the same coin. One deals with physical, non-written history, one deals exclusively with written history, but they work together to give us a more full picture of the past. I had a great class in college. Honors Biblical Archaeology with Dr. Barry Gitlin. It was fantastic. Um, we learned all about it was basically just archaeology of the Holy Land. It was really cool. His office was great, but he brought in some actual potsherds from a dig he had been on, I believe, in Jerusalem. So I was able to handle, like physically hold in my hands, a piece of pottery that was, howdy, welcome to the stream. I was able to handle physically a piece of pottery that was 7 or 8 thousand years old, which is humbling because you're holding in your hand something that has survived for an exponentially longer period of time than any individual person gets to be on this earth. Also, I could tech up, or at least focus on teching up, but I'm going to grab my colonist, and I'm going to take the next innovative idea and get that tech cost reduction. And I'm going to take native trading policy because my national ideas jive with that. And then I'm going to grab this province here as a jumping off point. Most historically accurate movie. Pretty much no medieval history done by Hollywood. Not a one. They all get something wrong. Saving Private Ryan is really good, but like, in terms of historical, and it's a great movie, but in terms of historical accuracy, it's really good. But that's a bit harder to fuck up because that's still in living memory. The Tudors is good. It dramatizes a lot of actual history, but it's a good show. Really, Saving Private Ryan is the one that comes to mind as like a... Obviously, the story is dramatized, but I credit them for doing their due diligence because they did actually interview like World War II veterans to get their experiences and factor them in. I have not had the opportunity. Inglourious Basterds is a fun movie, but I wouldn't go so far as to call it historically accurate. I enjoy it. I gotta say, though, favorite Tarantino movie is Pulp Fiction, with Reservoir Dogs as a close second. I will have to check those out. I've been looking for a new show I can really sink my teeth into, and Lady Renegade would also be pretty grateful for that. We've been trying to find a new show we can watch together. Band of Brothers is good. I have seen that. I haven't seen The Pacific. Haven't seen Borgia. Haven't seen Teutoburg Forest, although that battle is fucking wild to learn the history of. That was when the trees start speaking German. To Hell and Back, I have heard about it, but I've never seen it. I'm assuming it's named for the Audie Murphy poem. Also, thank you for that. I'm still kind of learning all these affiliate things, so I don't quite know what bits are yet, but I'll find out. Or cheers or whatever. I'm still learning a lot about how Twitch works. Oh, well, thank you for that. Also, Audie Murphy is like real life Captain America. The dude was fucking awesome. Hold on, my computer is straining. It's getting quite warm in my apartment. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Audie Murphy didn't factor into like the actual creation of the character of Captain America, except for the fact, well, really, Audie Murphy is like Steve Rogers pre-transformation because he was all of 5'3" and weighed maybe 110, 120 pounds. He was tiny, but he earned every medal that it was possible for an infantryman to earn. Another one I highly recommend you check out. I'm surprised there hasn't been a... Thank you for turning out for the stream. I'll be back on Sunday. Also, well, that makes sense. But yeah, I'll be back on Sunday from 8 to 10:30. If you're free, check it out. I usually crack out the whiskey for that one. But yeah, that makes sense. Where was I? Oh yeah. Guy you gotta check out is Mad Jack Churchill, and he fucking earned that name. He has the most recent recorded longbow kill in English military history when he sniped a Nazi officer through the throat to signal his men to attack. He also was known for charging German positions, playing the goddamn bagpipes like a fucking boss. Also, yes, he was. He wasn't from Texas, but he was a little guy. Um, and then another really cool guy was Daniel Inouye, who managed to clear an entire German bunker after getting his arm blown off. And then he lived into his 90s. I can't say I'm familiar with Leslie Allen. Let me do a quick Google search. Oh, Bull Allen. Yep, I have heard that name before. Australian Imperial Force. Yep, I have heard of him. I was just unfamiliar with his first name. Oh well, thank you, thank you for that. It's good to hear that. What's in the tank behind you? That is my girlfriend's a leopard gecko. His name is Jawa. And then you can't see him, but we got some frogs over there. Very nice. And as you can see, Lady Renegade is just as into history as I am, because that's her Rosie the Riveter poster. She's got some old newspapers from the 40s hung up. One of the things that first drew me to her was the fact that her profile picture on Tinder was her with a statue of Eleanor Roosevelt, and I'm like, huh, I like you. I've been playing EU4 for over 1,000 hours at least. I can't remember off the top of my head. I did. We met on Tinder. Um, but we've been together 3 going on 4 years, so. That's the thing about Tinder is, like, there's a few diamonds in the rough there. You just gotta sift through a lot of garbage before you actually get it. I work at a very small financial publisher in Baltimore, so. Not really. I am planning to restore, like, give France the natural borders it should have according to Napoleon, which is to expand to the Rhine. But it is a very nerdy office space. One of my earliest fans for the podcast is the guy who hired me, actually. He might be listening right now. He shows up in the chat every now and again. Yeah, I own being a dork. I was lucky to have been born in the 90s because I was born into an era when being a dork was kind of cool. Also, yes, it did. Because it used to be a lot more common than you think it was. Just you never meet anybody named Adolf these days for obvious reasons, but there used to be a lot more of them walking around out there. He also ruined the toothbrush mustache. There he is. Welcome to the stream. But yeah, Adolf died out as a name. Fair enough. Though it was Charlie Chaplin's mustache before it was Hitler's stash. Though there is actually a fun fact as to why it became Hitler's mustache. So Hitler actually almost died in World War One. He used to have like a big handlebar mustache going on. There's a picture of it somewhere. Let me find it. Yeah, he used to have... There he is. Here is a young Hitler in the German army circa 1916. As you can see, he used to have a much bigger mustache. Now, the reason he wound up shaving it down into the toothbrush stash is this actually ruptured it was a British gas attack, and it actually ruptured the seal on his gas mask, and he was actually temporarily blinded and almost killed by the gas bomb. But he survived and shaved it into the now infamous toothbrush mustache. So it wouldn't break the seal on his gas mask when he went back into action. He had a second brush with death during World War One, where his best friend during the war got his head fucking blown off by a British sniper, and Hitler wound up getting painted with his best friend's skull and brain and blood. So there was a British sniper in World War One who was a few inches away from blowing Hitler's head off. And yeah, it's he looked very different come the late 30s. He wound up earning the Iron Cross in World War One, which is the German equivalent of the Medal of Honor. They really were. They kind of died out with the Wild West, though, and well, the British Empire, too. They kind of died out with the British Empire. I think Hitler might have been the final nail, or Stalin might have been the final nail in the coffin for the handlebar mustache. Oh yeah, douchebag bartenders at hipster bars. Those bars usually have some decent beers, though, at the very least. I'm not a huge IPA guy, but they got some stuff that isn't that. The name doesn't ring a bell. I have never been to Michigan, but I'm always up to travel to new places. I'm from Maryland, and I have never actually been off the East Coast. Farthest west I've gone is West Virginia, but I've been all up and down the East Coast from Vermont all the way down to Florida. Also, that sounds awesome, and I will have to check it out. My sister had the opportunity to do a cross-country road trip over the summer, and that sounds awesome. But she did a cross-country road trip over the summer, and she went to Ohio and checked out some really cool breweries out there. All right, that is on my travel list now. See, we do have a pretty good craft beer scene in Maryland, I will say. Like we've got well, we've got the Guinness Brewery here now, which is awesome. We've got Dogfish Head. I believe Flying Dog is based in Maryland too. And then we also got what else have we got? I mean, you should try some like American beer gets a bad rap because of like Budweiser, which I will admit is pretty shitty. But there are some great craft beers coming out of the States these days. I have had Australian beer. I there's this one liquor store. My family goes down to the beach every year, and I got a huge can of Foster's Lager, and I I enjoyed it mostly for the novelty, but I did enjoy it. It was pretty good beer. Also, I will have to check that out. Victoria Bitter. All right, that's on the beer list. But oh, Manor Hill Brewery is pretty recent, but they have a fucking fantastic pilsner that I can't get enough of. We also got some good craft breweries in like Pennsylvania and Delaware and oh, what is he doing? I should get my trade situation sorted. Just gonna recall this guy. I was looking to move my main trade city to Calais. So once I get my Diplo points up, I'm probably going to move my trade into the Channel, and then once I conquer Flanders, I should be able to give the English a run for their money in the Channel. Yes, I know I have an unassigned merchant. I will assign him shortly. I can when I'm bringing the stream to an end, I will bring those up. I usually play with some mods on, so I don't play for achievements all that often. Like my favorite one right now is this gorgeous map mod called Europa Reborn. Complete map retexture makes it look so pretty. I love the farmland terrain it puts in, it adds to the game. Like if you're looking for a pretty map mod, Europa Reborn. Someone a while ago clipped my mod list, but I can give you guys a run through tonight too if you like. I've got a shitload of them on, so the game is probably pretty unrecognizable to for Iron Man mode, but I think they add to it, and they make it more historical. I've also got Heavy Europe, which is a great map mod that allows you to like if you'll notice, it doesn't have that weird fucking dip in the if you want to recreate the German Empire's borders, it doesn't have that weird little like dip with the Polish border. Basically, the mod Heavy Europe allows you to recreate the borders of 1914 if you really want. But I will add a mod list to the profile. Because most of my mods are history based, like just to make the game look and feel more authentic to the period. Because I think Paradox did a pretty good job with this game, because it's hard to make a map that works for the 300 or so years of history that this game takes place during. But they did a decent job of it. I just think it needed a little bit more tweaking. I also have a new dynamic. This mod is pretty recent, but it's a dynamic province name mod that includes renamed provinces for... Well, yeah, it was, but I started playing it around... I started playing this game around like 2014, thereabouts. So when I came in, I think it was pretty good. And it's pretty solid these days. It's expensive to get into, but a solid game. Like, I think if you can only get one DLC for this game, I would say Rights of Man. And I would agree with that, because I've spent God knows how much money on this. I don't even want to know how much money I've spent on this game over the years. But I have pretty much every DLC. Minus some of, like, the cosmetic shit. Because I didn't... And I admit, Paradox has me by the short ones here. Because they're one of the only games in town for this sort of game. Like, if you want a relatively historical game set in like these specific time periods, especially, they're kind of your only option. Total War is fun. The battles especially. But you're right, the grand campaign just doesn't do it for me. As for painting, yeah, the apartment is all painted and we're all moved in. Yeah, no. So Civ is fun. My buddy in college and I used to play it all the fucking time together. Civ 5 actually, which I think Civ 5 is peak civilization. And yeah, if you actually want to finish the campaign in any reasonable amount of time, you've got to you got to auto resolve. Otherwise, you're going to be spending hours and hours and not actually accomplish a whole lot. You know what game launched terrible but actually turned out to be pretty good was Total War Rome 2. I played the shit out of SimCity when I was a little kid. But I play a fair amount of Cities Skylines these days. Mostly because that's the closest to the old SimCity games that I used to love. Cities Skylines is a lot of fun. That said, yeah, I didn't know it at first either, but I had a buddy who played it and loved it and recommended it to me. So I checked it out, and it's a pretty darn fun city planning game. Well, see, I'm somebody with severe OCD, so building cities is fun for me because I get to make them all very organized and logical, and not like the city I came from, Baltimore, which is a fucking nightmare to drive in if you've never done it. Oh, come on. You know Baltimore's a bad city to drive in. I have been to Philly. Philly's also pretty bad. I've driven through New York, like the highway through New York. I've never been like into New York City proper to drive, but I've not heard good things about it. DC is also a pretty bad city to drive in. But no, City Skylines is a lot of fun. And when you've got that like city planning strategy game itch and you don't have oh shit. Um good luck dealing with the crocodile. Um I will be back on Sunday for the 8 to 10:30 stream. And also, yeah, DC was designed to look pretty on a map, but it was not designed for ease of use. Like actually, when the city planner of howdy, welcome to the stream. I'm gonna be wrapping this up in about 20 minutes, but I'm doing pretty well. We've got a good France run going here, and we've been talking about beer, history, city planning, you name it. I've actually just started to get out into the colonial game, and I need to speed my ass up actually because Portugal's getting in on Louisiana, which I want, and I'm gonna need to start in on Canada soon. Granted, there's only one province I can actually use to gain a foothold because I don't know what Paradox did with the latest fucking updates for North America, but this is just making colonialism fucking sucks in now. So I'm gonna make the best of it though. Also, I do play a fair amount of GeoGuessr, and I am pretty good at it. I think. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they did, but this is bad. And yeah, I can definitely do that. We'll wrap up with a mod list, and let's not do that. Let's stop spamming that. Dude, dude, come on. Jesus Christ. Please stop. I'm trying not to get banned. Yeah, I don't really want to piss off the website that I just that I just became an affiliate for. Probably wise. Oh well. All right, that's. I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'm still learning how a lot of the affiliate tools actually work. Yeah, I just banned that guy. I can't. I'm starting to get trolls now, which is kind of fun in its own way. Okay, those are my my trans. I don't. Why did I build transports? Ah, damn it. Yeah, I suppose it does. Yeah, I didn't want to build those transports. I have enough of those. Yeah, there's some interesting people that come out to watch these games. But I will have to set up the some kind of an auto mod or something. Just didn't have the time before this stream, but come Sunday, I'll try to have that set up. Yeah, I would say so. It was my first Paradox game. Little did I know it was like that first hit of crack that's just to get you addicted. And now I have fucking all of them in my. Oh no, Hoi 4. I have Hoi 4. Sorry, I thought you said EU4, but I could do a Hoi 4 run. That could be fun. I love the Kaiserreich mod in that game. CK2 was a really fucking good game. But I think CK3 is pretty fucking good, honestly. I think it fixes a lot of the clunky UI that made CK2 kind of painful to pick up. Because I remember when I first started playing CK2, I had a hell of a time sort of picking it up because I found the UI to be just kind of painful to use. Jesus. That might be because they just followed. Well, that one's banned too, so I'll definitely have to set up the auto mod. Kind of a bummer, but what can you really do? Steam Crab's right. Comes with the territory. Weirdos will turn up. Actually, my next episode of the I will do that. I will learn how to do that, and well, yeah, it does bring out the Zoomer bunch, but I'm gonna be setting things up. I just finished the onboarding not that long ago, so I will be trying to set that up. Probably tomorrow sometime, but oh, okay. Let me give that a go. Okay, well, it didn't like that, but I'll figure it out. Oh, okay, okay. Let me try that again. Does that work? Okay, okay. Yeah, no, so forgive me, I'm okay, there we go. Let's try that. Oh well, I'll go into my settings and add it. Also, I think I'm gonna call it for EU4 tonight and wrap things up with the mod list and around the GeoGuessr. So let's get out of here. And there we go. All right, come on. That's not what I wanted you to do. My computer is being an ass. Come on, Steam. Very nice. There we go. We got it. All right. So let me pull up my launcher here. Just Deus vaulting your way across the Holy Land. That's a true Crusader Kings player right there. Oh yeah, France is the new Ottomans. Right, so this is what I play with. So updated flag improvement pack just adds in a bunch of historical flags that I think fit a lot of the countries better. And then history of Europe is that sounds like Australia, or at least everything I've heard about Australia at least. But welcome back. So, and then I have the History of Europe mod, which is really cool if you're interested in learning some history while playing EU4, because it adds like a history blurb to every province in Europe, which is cool. And then these are all just various unit packs that they're just flavor. I think it makes the game look prettier. Mesogeos New Graphical Cultures is cool. It adds in Mediterranean buildings as well as some new buildings like city style. I honestly can't play without this now because it gives you like the red tile roofs you would expect from like Greece and Spain. It's great. And then more of the same, more unit packs from the same guy. Heavy Europe, historical European borders is a great fucking mod that gives you the basically the ability to recreate the 1914 borders. New World Colony names was great, but it's been discontinued for quite a while. And then a couple more unit packs. The Great Exhibition is cool because it adds in a lot of historical event pictures and paintings for actual events in the game. Historical Colonies is a fun mod if you want a very historical game because it makes all colonial nations stick to their actual historical colonies. I usually don't play with it on though because it can be a bit of a pain in the ass if you're just trying to do a game. No revolutionary names removes the revolutionary. It's pretty self-explanatory. It removes the revolutionary from a country if you launch a revolution. Blue Prussia, that's just my personal taste. It makes Prussia not the disgusting washed out gray it is in the base game and makes it Prussian blue. And then Europa Reborn is the awesome physical map mod that I had on. Fortress captures surrounding provinces. That does exactly what it says it does. A fortress if you siege down and capture a fortress, it will automatically capture all immediately surrounding provinces, which I think makes the wars a bit more fun. The Phoenix and the Crescent is a fun mod that imagines an alternate history where the Fourth Crusade didn't go off the rails, basically. And then this is the newest one, Dynamic Province Names expansion. Gives new names to pretty much every province in the game for various languages, which is great if you're playing a colonial power. And I guess one round of GeoGuessr. And then I'll wrap it up for the night, I think. Alright, so first one. This looks... The road sign is definitely in Europe. That looks... Oh, there we go. Equibank.cz. This is in the Czech Republic somewhere. Definitely a big city. So I guess or an urbanized area. So let's go somewhere around Prague. Well, it was Ostrava, but not that bad. This looks like... Oh no, that's... I think this is somewhere in Latin America, I think. That does look more like Portuguese than Spanish, though. So somewhere in Brazil. Yeah, that's definitely somewhere in Brazil. Where, I couldn't say, but somewhere in Brazil. So we'll at least be in the right country. I'm going to guess one of the more tropical areas, because I can see a lot of vegetation. So let's guess right about there. Well, I was a ways away, but I was in the right country. This looks... I think this is the States. Sherwood Hills Boulevard. Well, that's a parking job. That is a parking job. I think this is the US somewhere, though. Want to say the Midwest somewhere. Let's guess Illinois, Indiana, somewhere around here. Well, of course we have to. We have to see an ad. Oh, it was Canada, but not that far away. This is Japan somewhere, definitely. Or China. No, I think this is Japan. I'm no expert on like plants. Oh, Osaka? Let's try it. Let's try Osaka. No, it was Tokyo, so not bad. We weren't that far away. Also, I hate the ones where it just dumps us in the middle of the woods, but this I think is the US. Yeah, the street lines are a dead giveaway. I feel like I've driven on this exact street. So I want to say it's somewhere in Virginia. This looks like I think I've been somewhere around here. Oh well, I was in the South, so yeah, not that bad. I was at least in the right country every time. Well, except for the Canada one. So yeah, on that note, I think I'm gonna call it for the night. So I will see all of you on Sunday for the 8 o'clock stream. So I've been Renegade Historian. You guys have a good night. See ya.